The way she
I'm
said it,
feeling.
it's like Friday is not Friday.
It's not. Oh, I have so much work to do.
Yeah, I can
So
relate to
sorry.
that. I literally have one eye on work, but my goal is to focus on this conversation completely. But yeah,
Hi, Favor, welcome.
Hi, good evening.
Good
hello, hi
evening.
again, Favor. I feel like we were in a conversation together recently. It was the career planning session.
Yes, yes,
Nice,
yes.
nice to see you again. Hmm.
Nice.
All right, so we
Okay,
will give it 2 more minutes. Okay, someone is in. Hi, Nami, welcome. Oh, hi, Mariwa, welcome to.
Marwa, good to see you again. Mhm. Hi, I hope everyone's Friday is going well. I am ultra excited for the weekend. Even though I know it's going to fly by and I'll open my eyes and it will be Monday again, but I'm still excited anyway.
I feel like lately, once it's Sunday, I'm always like, can't we have another Sunday? Like, I'm actually not someone who is agitated about Mondays. I don't mind Mondays, but I just want another Sunday, a quiet day, no gra gra.
The weekend is
That's
literally
so
just few
relatable.
seconds.
I know, it's crazy.
We need to push harder for that 4 day work week. That's what we need to
Yeah.
do as a
Hmm.
collective. We need, you know what
Yep.
I really think we need to do? If you work for Smarketers Hub, stop listening. But what I really think we need to
Oh,
do is we need to just we need to just not go to work on Friday. We need to just
I
not
think
show
I would
up.
rather like have Monday off than Friday off.
Uh, I don't know if they're gonna give you that one either. I'm gonna just be real with you. The corporate world is too tightly bound to Monday. I feel you're
Monday.
not gonna get that one. But you see,
yeah.
Friday is more feasible. The way I see it.
Aisha, me, I've heard it, so no problem. We'll talk now, next meeting.
Please, oh. I didn't say anything.
Hi, Amos. Welcome. We are just catching up on how we are all doing before we get into the conversation. How are you doing?
Hello.
Awesome. I'm happy to hear. Oh, okay. Amos,
Yeah.
as a spirit. All right, so once it's 5:05, we will start, just so that we can also round up early. And I'll also be recording the conversation, or Lindy will record the conversation. So,
Yep.
I'm very happy.
We've
I'm
got
very proud
Lindy.
of Lindy.
She's been doing really well.
Yeah. All
I
right,
like
so
when
it's
an
five.
AI tool, oops, sorry, I was just sharing how I like when an AI tool has like a friendly name. But yeah, that's it.
All right, so let's get into the conversation. Welcome again, everybody. So today's conversation is tailored, well, it's centered around rethinking content from the strategy level in this AI future that we are already in, I would say. So the session is going to be conversational, or we want it to be conversational. I'm going to ask Aisha a couple of starter questions, and then from there, the floor is open. So you can ask questions. You can also contribute your ideas. But we think that, no, we strongly believe that this would this will be a very exciting conversation if it is more conversational. And because we're just not a lot even on this call for now, I think it's a good way for us to also just be very involved in the discussion. So feel free to share your opinion, feel free to jump in and etc. So thank you all again for being here. You all already know Aisha. She's our founder, but she's also a content marketing guru. She has worked all over the world. So I'm calling her guru at this point. But she has a lot of knowledge and experience about content and thinking about it from multiple perspectives, both industry-wise and continent-wise. So I think that, I know that she's a perfect person actually to just talk to us about content strategy for the future, just rethinking your content across channels for the future. All right, so I will start with a couple of questions for you, Aisha. So to start, and I think this is a very important question because it's like the foundation of it, I believe. Yeah, well, good content, the kind that converts, starts with like knowing the audience. There have been many discussions around audience research and understanding your audience, but in the context of the future we're walking into, what unconventional approaches would you recommend for understanding a brand's audience? Like really understanding a brand's audience?
Yep. Thank you. Thanks for the intro, the question. I'm just going to, I mean, yeah, I can start with answering the question, but I see more people are joining. So I'll do like a little bit of an intro that I think can also give a bit more context into why this conversation is really interesting for me personally. And then I go into answering your question, Etashe. So for those who don't know me, I'm Aisha, founder of Smarketers Hub, also a content marketer. I've been doing this for around 8 years now, maybe a bit more. And I currently lead content marketing at Photoroom, which is an AI photo editing app. Well, it's the leading sort of AI design and photo editing platform for e-commerce. The reason why I'm really interested in this conversation and excited about it actually is because this has been kind of like this entire topic of how we rethink content strategy and how we think about what we're doing with just organic content in total has been a big focus since obviously the advent of AI and looking at how user behavior is changing and how also just the new tools and new sort of like avenues for search and new user behaviors are impacting what you're seeing in terms of results from the content perspective. So this is something that I feel has been really top of mind, has played a big role in even shaping strategy for the companies that I worked with over the last sort of quarter into the last 2 quarters. So yeah, super top of mind topic. And I'm really, excited to be here and hopefully have a productive conversation with all of you today. So yeah, I'll also preface by saying I very much don't think that I have all the answers. In fact, right now at work, I'm running like several experiments and talking to many people because I just really think that is what will be at the cornerstone of our approach as content marketers, navigating like this world of AI that's ever changing. And so I would say keep that in mind throughout and basically bring your questions and let's just have a conversation. I'm also hoping to learn a few things from you today. So now let's go into Atasha's question. You asked around how to, I guess, get more knowledge and understanding about your audience, especially because obviously good content is one that good content that converts starts from knowing your audience. Let's see. I want to draw from my personal experience a lot for the answers in this session because I really think that that's where we can get like the most value. In terms of knowing your audience, I would say all the traditional approaches that you know today are still relevant. So things like diving deep and doing like actual user research, persona research, talking to your users, like those are still the places that you should start from. There's nothing that I say today that should outweigh the actual value that you can get from reaching out to your users, figuring out who they are, pulling them in for a conversation, testing your content to them in real time. I think that all of those approaches are still definitely going to be, they're approaches that I don't believe will stop being relevant at any point in time. I think that those are still going to be direct contact, will probably still be the best way to understand how your users are thinking and what they're looking for and how they feel about your content and things like that. But of course, that's also not something that you can do at scale in terms of, how long it takes you to find, confirm, and book, for instance, like user research interviews with how many users. Like we've been doing some of those types of interviews both at Smarketers Hub, at Photo Room where I work as well. And those things take a lot of time. And so you still need to be thinking about how to get quick insights and how to make sure that your strategy is evolving alongside the markets in itself. And so that's why today I'm going to be sharing just some things that I've done also to figure out like a better way, quicker way to get like real-time insights about your audience, to understand like behavioral patterns, and also to notice like how AI is actually impacting those patterns as well. So the very first one, which I actually don't think a lot of people do enough, is just putting yourself in your audience shoes in terms of actually reverse engineering the discovery process and reverse searching the audience's questions. So say, for example, like you, again, I'm going to use myself and the work that I'm focused on right now a lot as an example. So feel free to contextualize this for yourself as much as possible. But say, for example, I would like to understand how, what people are finding when they're searching for AI tools for e-commerce, for example. So the first step is really to think about like, what's a question that someone could have? Like, what are the best AI tools for receiving payments in e-commerce, or for designing content in e-commerce, or for making, signatures, or whatever it is that you're doing really. And so my first step will be actually doing those searches to understand, like, when I search today as a user would, what comes up, right? Just getting a clear sense of like the same journey that your user would follow. What, you need to also be taking that journey and walking that path to then see for yourself, like, what actually comes up. And that's how you start to, first of all, understand like how is the web, first of all, returning answers to your user, but also, of course, we're going to talk a little bit more about like even how searching is changing due to AI. But basically getting a sense of like, how are your users, like, what kind of answers are your users getting when they search? What are they being met with? I think is always going to be the very, very first place for you to also understand just where you can start to influence like your customers' knowledge and their decision making. So putting yourself in their shoes and going to all the different platforms where they would usually go to search for information, and following that process for yourself all the way to the end and seeing what kind of results come out, what's top. And I mean, if you're an SEO writer, a content writer, if you're a content creator, this is probably a process that is part of your workflow already. But I think it's even more important now when you think about content marketing, because you want to be very clear on what kind of answers your users are getting. And it's not enough to just do the search. It's also you need to be doing that search with an analytical and strategic mindset, in the sense that you want to now understand, like, okay, what is the problem with these answers? Like, where are the gaps? Are the answers too generic? Are they specific? Are they like super specific? So maybe actually they're already meeting all of your users' needs, and so maybe there's not that much of an opportunity for that particular search journey. But then maybe for another search journey, you see that actually the answers that you're returning or you're getting back are too generic, and so that's you already spotting some opportunities to create content that is deeper, that has more first-hand knowledge, or something that maybe brings a completely different opinion or perspective from what is the norm. So that's one. Just to recap on that point, basically putting yourself in your audience's shoes and basically taking the entire journey of what their search process would look like when they have a problem and they're trying to find a solution. Another thing that I can also highlight for that point is thinking about how to essentially like go into the spaces where your audience hang out. This is, again, a point that you've probably heard a million times, but I also don't think that people are doing enough. It's really like, at the end of the day, the people that you're trying to reach, they're not imaginary They're real human beings with real problems. And so going to the communities where they hang out, so whether it's Slack, whether it's Instagram, whether it's a Facebook group, whether it's on Twitter, wherever it is, whether it's LinkedIn, where are they spending time and asking questions? And all of this, of course, comes from, first of all, even already having an idea of who exactly are we trying to reach. And so all of this is under the assumption that you've done the preliminary work of figuring out, like, this is who my audience is, and these are the people that will benefit from whatever product or service that the business that you're working for is rendering. And so going to those places where they hang out, I think, is becoming increasingly important even today. Because, for example, I was having a conversation with our SEO manager at Photoroom recently, and we were talking about how it's not enough to just rely on keyword research anymore. Like, we need to see exactly how users are phrasing their problems today, what solutions they already trust, and what frustrates them as well. And so all of that, you don't get all of that from doing keyword research. You get it from actually going to the places where your customers are spending time, having conversations, hanging out, and expressing those like frustrations and issues. So sometimes you may even need to become friends with your audience and basically like connect with them more directly. One resource that I've seen used at different points in my career, we had something like this when I worked for Carbon, the digital bank in Nigeria. We basically had this exclusive and closed like Facebook group for users. And like Facebook gets a lot of bad rap, but it's actually quite useful when you want to think about like, people having conversations. If your audience are on there, it can be a really, really good resource when you have like a closed community group or just groups tailored to the specific topic or context of your business, basically. And in those groups, we have something similar as well at Photoroom. We have Photoroom closed community. And sometimes, again, if your audience are on Facebook, these groups can be really large and you can have up to 30,000, 40,000, even more people in one group, just kind of like chatting, sharing their ideas, sharing their work, asking questions. And that can be like a wealth of resource for you to even understand, like, again, how are your audience phrasing their problems? What do they like about current solutions? What do they trust? What are they already comfortable with? What's frustrating to them? Basically just understanding what their pain points are. And these can be like really valuable information that you can then use to tailor your own content. Can also help you understand like where the gaps are as well in the content that you're creating. And then finally, let's talk about for this point, also how you can use AI in this process. I would say to better understand your audience, there's also, there's a lot of testing that goes into it at the end of the day, because as marketers, I say this a lot, your job is not to have all the answers. Your job is not to, have the perfect strategy. Your job is to look at all the available information, make a tailored decision that is kind of data driven as much as you can, and then experiment, test, and learn and continue to improve. So your job is basically to manage that entire process and to have an eye on the data, to continue to make changes and learn, and basically to document your learnings. To go through that process is your job, more than to figure it out and get it right at first, experiment or at the beginning. And so I think this is, having that point in mind is something that can do two things for you. First is remove that pressure to feel like you need to figure it out immediately, to feel like, your content isn't performing and then you go into the state of like panic. It's fine. It's actually fine if your content is not performing. It just means that you need to look at the data, you need to experiment with something else, you need to do some more research. Like, it just means there's more of the process work that you need to do. And so I think that's one thing that having that in mind can do for you. And then the second thing is giving you that willingness and opportunity, I guess, is to keep testing and keep iterating. And this is also an area where you can use AI. So thinking about, a lot of people use AI for ideation, but you can also be using AI for your testing as well, in terms of generating multiple versions of any kind of content that you're trying to test and using them across different platforms, and getting a sense of what actually performs. So say, for example, you have a key message, there's a customer story. So you've already done the unique thing of like going super niche and creating something that AI cannot just create, because this is literally the voice of your customer. But the work isn't over. You still need to think about how you deliver the message in a way that then lands and on what platforms. And this is where AI can help you in terms of adjusting the tone, creating multiple different versions that you can then test across different platforms to learn, okay, actually our audience prefer to get the story this way, or they prefer to, interact with the story in a different way. I'll give a quick example. One thing that I've been doing at Photoroom whilst building out our customer story program is thinking about like the different customer story formats that we can invest in. So we have a YouTube video. Usually, so far it's been between like 3 minutes long for the enterprise stories, and then for small business stories we try to go longer. But this wasn't always the case. At the beginning, we were creating 3 minutes long videos for basically all the user stories, whether it was a larger business, whether it was a smaller business. And what we realized is, like, for enterprise clients who are the same people who would be watching the customer stories, the larger businesses, they just prefer to watch a shorter video, get like really quick insights and move forward with their lives. Whilst for smaller businesses, they're more interested in more shareable formats, reels, and they want the customer story. It's the same customer story, but they just want it in a different format, and they find it more engaging in a different way. And so knowing that, like, that's not insights that we had from the beginning, because we were doing the same thing across board, but we started to see, like, actually this is performant, this isn't performant, and then testing other formats off the back of that. So use AI in your process, but I want to do a quick recap. Basically, to answer the question around basically getting to know your audience a bit more, I would say reverse search their questions. So follow the process for your own self. Basically, shadow them in communities, look at where they're actually spending time, see what they're sharing there, and use those insights to review your own content and understand where the gaps are, what you can fill, what you can do better, what format you can explore, and then also using AI in your process to create multiple versions of your work and basically make it faster for you to test different formats and keep learning. But yeah, that's what I would say on that one.
Thank you so much. Very interesting ideas, and especially like with the part of using communities to really understand your audience, because as a writer, I do that a lot. I scour Reddit and YouTube and every community you can think of. And it's so amazing what people are actually saying or typing and how you can put that into your piece of content. So I really like that advice. One thing I'm curious about off the back of this is the specific AI tools you use for understanding your audience better at work.
That's a good question. I wouldn't say this one is an AI tool specifically, but one tool that I've been spending a lot of time in recently is user testing. Just because user testing allows you to essentially recruit a pool of testers immediately, very, like, not a time-consuming process at all, and you can have your screener questions, so you can really get targeted in terms of these are the types of people I'm trying to talk to. And something I've been enjoying doing is actually talking to people who use our competitors. So I want to look for like businesses or individuals who love using tools like Pixar or maybe Canva or whatnot, and basically understanding what it is that they like about those tools, what it is that they like about the content that they're able to get, how they spend their time, how they interact, and basically using that to then plug the gaps. So again, not an AI tool specifically, but that's one tool that I would say I've been spending a lot of time in. Another one that is AI specific is Perplexity, just because I feel Perplexity is really positioning themselves as the future of search. And we increasingly find people using them. I've also been digging into our data and seeing that actually there's more and more usage coming from Perplexity in terms of referral traffic. And so for myself, it's been really interesting to then do the process of reverse engineering the search process. So going into Perplexity by myself and then asking questions that I would imagine that the audience is looking for, to see what kind of answers are actually coming up. Where are the areas where basically, there's more of a visibility for Photoroom, where are the areas where there's less visibility, and then thinking about how that can impact the overall content strategy. So these are two tools that I can share.
Thank you. That's really interesting. I was going to ask my second question, but I think, again, leaning into just making this very conversational, does anyone want to chip in here? Do you want to ask questions? Also, please feel free to turn on your camera if you want to. Just feel very free in this space. So let me know, or just unmute yourself and speak if you have anything you'd like to share or ask around what we just talked about. Sure, please go on.
Hi, good evening. So I actually have a question. There's a particular client I was working with, and I'm an SEO marketer, or I don't know, SEO shop. But but majorly there was a client I was working with, and we couldn't figure out how people kind of get the traffic that they're getting. Because it's not like we wanted to actually target that particular type of keyword that is majorly popular. It wasn't mainstream. So when you're handling things that are particularly not mainstream, or maybe traffic that comes from other angles, how do you navigate that so that you can actually now go through their process? Because, for example, when you ask questions like, why am I feeling sad? Because it was a mental health thing. So it was like mental health and confidence. Why am I feeling sad or weird after speaking up for myself? You understand? Those kind of questions do not have the search traffic. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. And then what I'm trying to do is get people down to the site. So how am I going to go down like the back route to get people to come in, you know, without, because if you write the exact question, or why are you feeling sad, or this is why you're feeling sad, you're not particularly targeting anything in terms of volume. But then again, it's their question. So yeah.
That's a really, really good question. So this is where keyword research is not is not completely enough, and you need to now be understanding, because if you say that's the question, but that's not what people are searching for, but that's ultimately what they are trying to get to, then what you really need to be investigating is what are they searching, right? And so what are they searching and where are they landing? And maybe this is where also actually establishing like direct contact with your audience to understand like how are you searching, what kind of information is useful to you right now, could be really useful. Because from what I would also love to understand from your perspective is, have you already done the, I guess, traditional aspect of doing the keyword research to understand these are the keywords that are actually ranking and these are the content pieces that are associated with those keywords? Because my advice is, if you've already done all of that and you're already targeting those keywords that have higher volumes and getting that traffic, then the second aspect of figuring out where your content, where your audience rather is going and what they're actually searching for to still get to the same topic, can come from direct research and looking into, things like communities and basically trying to understand what terms are they using, what language are they using today. Not sure if I have the full context here for your question, Naomi.
So answering your question, yes, I've done the keyword research, but definitely I will look into the direct contact aspect, because I think that's where it's lacking, communities, and going straight to the, former users slash intending users. So I think I'll do that and hopefully give you feedback.
Sure. Looks like we have another question. Gabriel, do you want to go?
Yeah, so I just want to say a little thing about what she mentioned, because I feel like I had like a similar problem too. Yeah, so there are some keywords that you know for sure they are like the keywords that are very related to your brand or the service you are doing. But when you check the volume, right, it does not make sense to just create something around that. But one thing I think I've learned, like some past month or so, is that apart from Google search, people are also using social media as like they are using it like the way they are using Google for keyword for search now. For example, TikTok. Yeah, so people actually go on TikTok to actually search, right? The way they go on Google to actually search for things. So beyond just the using your Google Search Console and all of that things, you can also check into social media channels, platforms that people usually use for search these days to understand, like she said, how they ask these questions, the kind of answers that are already there, what are the gaps, and how you can bring in your own service into it to answer it better. Yeah, I hope that works.
Looks like we have one more raised hand. But yeah, super solid point, by the way. I'm planning to mention something about that, I think, in some of the other questions that Tasha has. But yeah, very, very valid. Even I, these days, I think I go to TikTok more than I go to Google when I'm looking for answers to questions or recommendations for things, because the UGC aspect of it is invaluable, right? Like seeing it, every person actually answering your question and sharing their recommendations. So yeah, the search behavior is indeed changing. But let's take as Tijani's question. I don't know which one is the.
So my question is, now that we are dealing with a lot of AI right now when it comes to creating content, so I want to ask, how can we generate traffic? Because right now I don't want to believe it's getting difficult to rank at number one or to even be the number one article when people search for a particular keyword as well. And for some organization, I think they just want to see the article at number one, even though we are telling them we are getting traffic, we are getting readers for this article. But if the article is not number one, it's like, come, you are not doing a good job. So what are the methods we can use to maybe to rank when on Google? And secondly, what other skills do you think a content marketer should learn this 2025? Okay.
Yeah, really good questions there. I feel with respect to ranking number one, it's a tough one because the whole search landscape has already changed. I mean, I think Etasha was just going to ask me, and maybe I just launch into my answers for that, because you were going to ask me like how tools like AI overviews, Perplexity, and ChatGPT are affecting inbound marketing. And these are some of the tools that are also affecting your possibilities to take your article all the way to number one. I think the science of like you do your SEO properly, you do your keyword research, you write a strong piece, and it garners some traffic and it continues to climb, and then it's at number one. That science has already kind of been disrupted, and so today I feel the focus needs to shift a lot more from getting your content to number one on Google to really thinking about like how do you maximize like that visibility and trust for your content, where your audience can keep coming back and keep recommending it, and essentially you're building that like consistent bank of traffic over time. I think the first thing that we can kind of highlight on that point is you're probably all already familiar today, and maybe this is something that you've also seen as you search, but with Google's introduction of AI overviews, that's basically like number one uh, number one way right now for traffic to kind of like be short-circuited from your website. And so what typically happens, so I will explain a little bit just for people who are not familiar, but essentially now when you search for specific keywords on Google, I actually don't know if they've rolled this out like worldwide, but I do know that in the US and the UK and a bunch of other markets, this is already the case. But essentially, when you search for some specific keywords, now you have a little section at the top where an AI answers basically the question that you're looking for. And so it removes the need for searchers to click all the way through to your website. And what's interesting about that is that the AI overviews may still be pulling from your website to answer the question, but the difference is like even though your content has been used to answer the question has been answered right there on Google. And so the person doesn't end up clicking all the way through to your website, which means of course you lose that engaged session, or you lose that session. And so even on our side, what I've noticed is there's a consistent climb in SERP impressions. And so that means more and more people are actually seeing your content pop up when they search for something, but then they're not coming all the way through to the website because they've already gotten the answers. And so this just means that like if you're a brand that is relying solely on organic search, like there's going to be a bit of a risk, because if people aren't landing all the way to your website, then ultimately your set traffic is your traffic is just going to continue to tank, even though the content is actually being useful and giving your audience the insights that they're looking for. And so I would say that there are a few things that obviously you can do to, I guess, mitigate this. And one of them is actually what I think it was, don't remember who was speaking now. My brain is doing a Friday thing. But basically, someone else was just talking and mentioned around like thinking about how you know people are searching across other platforms, but also for you as a content marketer is also thinking about like how to expand your content discovery beyond just Google. So people are searching, like he said, on TikTok, people are searching on Perplexity, they're searching on Reddit, people are going more and more to YouTube instead of just Google. And so as a brand, like traditional SEO is not, it doesn't cut it anymore. That cannot be the bread and butter of your entire strategy. Even if at the end of the day, the journey may still bring someone all the way back to your website, because you also want to be thinking about like as you're creating content across all of these other channels, how you're cross promoting the content and making sure that like, you know, a link to a website is still there and you're still connecting the dots across all those platforms and making sure that you can still keep, you know, the traffic circulating across all your different touch points. But ultimately, like as businesses in today's world, we just need to think beyond like the traditional blog SEO. We need to think beyond like your goal being like, I want to rank #1 on Google. And this is also is an education thing, you know, so part of it is also on us as content marketers to educate our stakeholders and to educate the businesses that we're working on to help them understand like this is what the landscape looks like right now. This is why we cannot, you know, be solely focused on this particular thing, and this is why we need to diversify our efforts. So the onus is on us to understand what's going on as much as it's changing super fast, and to, you know, do our research, to speak to people, to come up with our strategies, and to get stakeholders on board. Unfortunately, all of it is your job. And so basically it's thinking about like how you're diversifying your organic content focus across the channels that, again, don't just pick these channels out of, okay, people are searching on X channel, so I'm going to invest in there. It's thinking about like, are there actually, you know, your audience, like, do your audience actually search here, right? So also doing a bit of research to understand, like, are my audience actually here? And then thinking about how you find the balance between investing in what you already know and what works, and then also testing new formats. A good example is I've been having a long conversation actually at work around like if we invest more in Reddit or not. And you know, people tend to have like diverse opinions, like, okay, yeah, I think, you know, we should be posting more on Reddit. There's someone on the team who is like, I think we should be posting every day on Reddit, like 10 posts. We need to be asking questions. We need to hire this like big network of freelancers. We need to get, you know, we need to be on Reddit. And there's that big push. And obviously, as a content marketer, thinking about the overall investment for time, for resources, I'm thinking, okay, what I'm going to do is 70-30 split. So I'm going to focus 70% on all the different channels that we already know, that we know are working, we've proven them, we're experimenting with our strategies, we have consistent growth and learnings. And then I'm going to take a little bit of investment and put it in this other channel and run a test for a specific period of time. So don't also be afraid to go out and experiment with different things and see what you learn, because I really think that that's how we're going to stay afloat and keep you know, your process dynamic in terms of where you really start to see like investment, or rather where you really start to see results for your audience, or for your content rather, sorry. One other thing I can highlight is, and I think this one is actually really interesting, is a bit of a behavioral change in the sense that AI is actually impacting the audience's expectations. So if you notice, like when you search on any AI platform, like AI is very amazing at giving you like super quick insights. Like there's no story, there's no fluff. And so I think that shift to being able to search for what you're looking for and get your answer immediately has actually done a lot more. Like it has changed what users even expect when they're searching for content today. And it's something that I think, you know, a lot of content marketers, like we need to keep it top of mind, in the sense that like there's no room anymore for beating around the bush. Like we have to be thinking about how we deliver succinct, quick value, how you stand out using like storytelling. Basically what makes this piece of content worthwhile. right? So beyond just thinking about your overall strategy, there's now a bigger focus also on how you actually deliver the content. Me, I say now that like we need to be writing like we speak, like stripping out everything that's unnecessary and focusing on giving immediate value as much as you can, whether it's a video, whether it's a blog post, whether it's a Twitter post, whatever piece of content it is that you're creating is really, really important, I think, now to just go straight to the point, because that is what your users are getting more and more comfortable with when they go to AI. And so your content has to also kind of match this expectation that users are having now. And think about it even for yourself. Say you're looking for the answer to a question, whatever that is. If you ask ChatGPT, you get like boom, boom, boom. Your answer is there. You spend like 2 seconds and you're done. And so what is the incentive for going ahead and then reading like a long blog post when you already know that, like, you know, you're not reading like a piece of research, or you're not reading this like super intricate like first person perspective and whatnot. So depending on what kind of content you're creating and what your audience's expectations are coming into that piece of content, you also need to be thinking about what the overall delivery is and how that lends itself back to performance, because all those things are intricately connected. And so let me see, what else did I want to highlight on that point specifically? But yeah, I would say those are some things that you can think about as it relates to how these AI tools are actually affecting the inbound traffic that you're getting. Because yes, traffic is dropping. If your approach has been solely focused on traditional SEO and you're just, you know, answering questions relating to specific keywords, then you might be noticing a drop. You might see that it's harder for you to actually rank. And this is because now there's a lot less reward for just doing the cookie cutter sort of, you do your keyword research, you write a piece, you're done, and you know, all the best, and you have your traffic. I would say we need to work a little bit harder, but in an interesting way, basically, where you're thinking about what that value is that you're providing, and you're also diversifying your approach, still organic, but investing more in other channels and other content formats, and just increasing your touch points across board and your visibility across board, and not putting all your investments into, you know, traditional SEO just because user behavior is changing, everything is changing. So we have to change as well. Our strategy has to change too. That's what I was saying.
That was so packed. Aziz, how do you feel? Did you get any, based on the question you asked before I say something else?
Yes. I got to respond that one. Thank you very much.
Okay, awesome. I feel like I just got so many questions based on everything you were saying. And one important question, and one thing I'm really curious about, and there's also something you said about like rethinking content. So I think I'll start with this question because it's supposed to be my third question, but it takes us right into that. So with AI generated content everywhere, what type of content will result in acquiring customers? Because at the end of the day, that's one of the biggest purpose of content. And how can teams, I think you've kind of answered this, but if you have more insights, how can teams rethink their content strategy moving forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have some insights to share that I can add. The first thing I would say is, if you're like me and you're going more and more to TikTok to answer your questions instead of Google, there's a reason why. And again, the reason is because you're getting first person narratives, you're getting insights from someone that, you know, it just feels more trustworthy somehow, even though they could have very well been paid to tell you everything that you're hearing. But just because, you know, you've got a person, you've got a story, is something that feels more relatable. And so thinking back to what content is actually going to drive the most impact, you can apply the same mechanics. And these are things that we've always, at least I would like to believe, we've kind of always known, you know, but at the same time, I really think it's all about finding a balance at the end of the day. But some content types that I would say, you know, are more likely to get you that, get you all the way from awareness down to conversion in today's world are really those first person insights. So things like customer stories, where you're sharing, you know, real numbers, real impact, a real story. And it's not just, you know, because even customer stories is not enough to just have a customer story. It's very important to think about like the story part, people forget the story part a lot, because it's not enough to just be like, okay, this customer got XYZ from using the brand. You need to be thinking about like, what was the problem that the customer faced? How impactful was that problem? And how did they approach a solution? What other tools did they try? So telling a full story that someone else who's also, in the same shoes would be able to relate to and understand and feel, kind of connected to. And that it does a lot more. Words makes like a huge impact when it comes to, actually moving someone all the way to the point of making a decision to, use your business or service or whatever it is. And so I would say customer stories that are result based, but also have the full story and the full journey and the full context of what the customer's situation has been and what kind of impact your product or service has made. And then I would also say there's something else I've been noticing quite a lot on LinkedIn now, but it's basically like people want to talk to people. I mean, we've known this, right? Again, this is something else that we've known, but all these things it's interesting how they feel like new information, but they're really not. But you would, if you've noticed this on LinkedIn as well, let me know. But basically, the businesses who are winning are those who have created like tons of advocates across the teams. And so people are no longer connecting as much with like a brand account, just coming and sharing things all the time. So say you've got, again, I'll use the company I currently work for. You've got the Photo Room LinkedIn account. When we share content on the Photo Room LinkedIn accounts, it just performs averagely, like most of the time. However, what we see is when we have our customers sharing content, it might be the same, a good example, in fact. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I shared a customer story on our brand LinkedIn account. It's a story that we had with Le Bel Maus, which is some French solidarity-based company, and I shared that on our company LinkedIn. Didn't do that well. I mean, it did like averagely, kind of what we expected. But then the customer shared the story, not on their own LinkedIn account, but basically the customer, I think was the account manager who actually worked on the project and chose Photo Room for the business, shared the story, and that, in LinkedIn terms, kind of went viral. And that the only reason why that was different was because it came from a person who was able to speak to the core like message of what the story was. It's the exact same story, but just because people are seeing it come from a person who's connected back to the story, it has so much more impact than a brand account sharing it, for example. So thinking about like how you can utilize first person narratives across your overall content, and it's content marketing, like it's not something you leave up to chance. Like you need to be building it into your strategy. Like who are the advocates? Who are the people that are going to share? How are you enabling them to share? What materials are you creating? All those things are super important. You can't leave them up to chance. Distribution is a big part of your strategy. So it's not enough to just think about the content in itself. You need to also be thinking about how it's going to get back to the hands of your users. So sometimes it's not even about the format, it's about how you actually share it. And so I would say stories from your customers, from employees, founders, like make those people work. Our founder, and I say this also as a founder who is just doing her best, because I know my team are here and they're probably side eyeing me like, we ask you to share sometimes and you'll be taking 3 weeks. I'm working, I'm doing my best, okay, I'm trying. But yeah, I would say that, people connect a lot more with people, and having those first person narratives where people can also add a bit of a personal touch to whatever it is that you've created, it really, really makes an impact. And so you should also be thinking about how to build that type of content into your strategy, as opposed to leaving it as something that, comes after. And then I would also say behind the scenes, kind of like showing how things work, very important. Depending on the industry that you're in, can be really useful, depending on who you're targeting as well. So again, another example, at the company that I work for, the behind the scenes of our work tends to be really technical, because we're basically talking about like how we're training our models and what, the technology that we're using and all of that. And there's a specific audience that is interesting to. So it's like chief data officers, heads of data and whatnot. And so for that audience, we're able to create content that is specifically tailored to them, that goes deep into the things that they would care about, and they're finding it useful. Now, if you give that to a customer who is an e-commerce seller that just wants to make it easier to remove backgrounds from their images, they don't care that much. They don't want to know if you've trained your model on 1 million images or 2.5 million images, or if the speed is this or the latency is that. They do not care. What they care about is the product in my hands working very well. Do I have a quick result? Is it easy to use? And things like that. And so thinking about how you vary your content even when you're talking about like behind the scenes and process content, to vary it to basically be tailored to the specific audience that will find it useful, and thinking about that all the way down to distribution. So how you actually get it into their hands will be very important. And then I would say a final one, which I'm starting to also kind of explore a bit more, is having an opinion, having your own opinion. It's a tough one because what you really need to do is find those thought leaders within the business to then understand, like, okay, the world is talking about, what's a good example? I mean, there's always like AI news every day, say, even like say marketing news, whatever it is really. I'm trying to look for an example in the AI world. Nothing is coming to mind right now. I'll think more. But essentially, having a bit, yeah, go ahead, Natasha.
I was saying HubSpots. You were thinking of a topic, the incident
Yes.
with HubSpots.
Yes. Thank you. That's a very good example. Yeah. So, I mean, the world was well, I won't say the world. That's a bit much. But a lot of people were, outraged and interested and curious when HubSpot suddenly and drastically lost so much of their organic traffic after Google's sort of like algorithm refreshes and things like that. And I mean, left to me, my own opinion on that entire situation is just like it makes so much sense to me, because if you look at like a lot of the content that they were sharing, there were things that had absolutely nothing to do with HubSpot, and so they were just playing the whole game of, okay, you've got a keyword, you've got content, shove it, the whole SEO game of basically writing about something and just getting all the way to the top and getting content to rank without necessarily thinking about, like, is this actually, first of all, connected back to my business? Like, is it relevant? Is it useful for my audience? Are we even maintaining this content over time? And so, my opinion, my opinion, first of all, is that like that kind of content strategy is there's just no space for it anymore. I really think, because everybody is changing, even the users are changing, right? Like, I personally think users can see through that type of strategy now, where you're searching for something and a company or a company's blog post or landing page or whatever comes up, and you can just see that like they actually don't do anything relating to this thing that you're looking for. Like, maybe it gives you the answer to the question that you're searching for, but then that is not something that you're then going to go all the way down to conversion for. So at the end of the day, it's a waste of your time and theirs. So ultimately, this doesn't connect completely back to having opinionated takes, but I did like that you gave me the opportunity to share to share my opinions on that situation, because I found it really, really funny. Let's see. Something else that I can also say is shifting content strategy from just doing more and more and more to really thinking again about having some depth, right? So having higher quality content. Like, again, it's so cheap to create content right now. Like, it's cheaper than it has ever been to create content. But this doesn't mean that people are not hiring writers anymore. I'm still hiring writers. Like, and so what this just means is like there's the shift that's going from, we just want to make more and more and more content, to we want to make, like, if it's 5 high quality pieces of content that we can continue to evolve over time and maintain, and that basically answer a user's question, gives them value. And so even sometimes you'll find that those pieces are actually things that AI would then reference and continue to give you traffic across different touch points. But it's so important to invest in evergreen, high quality pieces, like shifts from just doing things for doing sake and really go deeper. I already talked about distribution. Distribution is super important. If you're not building distribution into your content strategy today, leave this meeting after this call. When we end by 5, I'm going to start. No weekend for you. I'm just joking, but for real, you need to be thinking about distribution. Like, it's not enough to just make the content and say we've done this, we've posted a blog. No one is reading it, babe. You need to think about how you're getting it into your users' hands. And then, yeah, finally, on that point as well, I think I can also highlight like having your own channels, because of course we've talked about like using all the different channels, talked about using social media, Google and whatnot. But what you notice is your own channels, like your own newsletter, your email channels, your own Slack community, your close Facebook groups. Those are the spaces that no one can really come and take away from you, or algorithm changes cannot just come and, change everything basically. And so I think for a brand, it's super important to have those spaces in addition to all the other things that you're doing organically across board. But it's important to have your own spaces where you have that direct contact with your audience. And it can also be a good place to recruit users for user testing, to share your content for feedback, get product feedback. Basically, it does so much for you. Like, it's completely invaluable. And if you do the investment in, keeping some of these spaces going as well, it can bring a lot of value to your business down the line. One thing I'll add though, because I know this audience, I think might be diverse and you probably have more people working in content here. You may feel like actually not all of these things are my job. Say, for example, I'm talking about like all the way down to distribution, making sure your content is like visible on social media. For some of you, you might have it, maybe you're working with a team and then there's someone who's like responsible for social media. There's someone who's responsible for community, for example, and you can't do everything. So you're thinking, how do I connect the dots across board? Great question. No one asked me, but I think you're thinking it, and I will just answer. It's very, very important to when you're preparing your strategy to bring all of these people into the process. Like, content strategy shouldn't be that thing that you're doing behind closed doors anymore. It should be something that you're pulling everybody in, and there's buy-in, and everyone understands this is the journey that we want to take our audience on. These are the content pieces and platforms that we want to invest in, and so everyone can kind of be working off the back of an aligned, like everyone is aligned and can be working off the back of a specific plan, as opposed to something that is happening in silos. I think that's one advice I can definitely share with content teams that can really elevate just your work and make sure that there's no confusion around like, okay, I posted something or there's an article, but then, it can't be distributed right now because social has a completely different strategy or community has a completely different strategy. You want to bring everyone into the room and make sure that you're aligned before you start investing. Wow.
Awesome.
Let's drink some water.
Yeah. So does anyone have any contributions, any questions? We are kind of already out of time. Aisha, how many more minutes can you be with us for?
Let's say 5.
Okay. So does anyone have thoughts, questions? Now this is like the open floor session, so everybody talk, and yeah, you can go on, Gabriel.
Yeah, I just want to ask, do you think that optimizing for AI search is a thing?
Good question. And so when you say AI search, do you mean like Perplexity, ChatGPT, or do you mean like AI overviews?
I'll just say everything. For example, maybe you're selling a software and people search for that kind of solution on maybe Perplexity, maybe on OpenAI, ChatGPT, maybe on even Google. Is there a way, like, is there like actually tactics to make sure that you actually appear there? Is it a thing? Because it's like one of the trends I'm seeing right now.
Yeah, that's a great question. What I would say, because it's also something I've been looking into, is there's no clear way. There are like many different insights that we've seen. People are saying, like, for instance, ChatGPT is like heavily trained on like Reddit data, for example. So if you show up more on Reddit, then you show up more in ChatGPT search. These are all like speculations at the end of the day, because there's no like specific, like, okay, this is the formula, do this and you show up. And so what I advise instead is, once again, doing that content, making sure that your content discovery is expansive and is not just focused on a specific channel. So if people are searching across board, then making sure that you're also investing across board. So say, for example, you've got your blog content that you're creating, but you're also showing up on social media. You're showing up like on TikTok, for example. If Reddit is relevant to your audience, you're investing there. If you're maybe investing on YouTube, but thinking about like, again, putting the audience first, like, it kind of takes me back to that HubSpot story, because what HubSpot did really was focus more on the algorithm more than even the users at the end of the day. And so they were more focused on, okay, we want to rank on Google. So they created tons of articles, not very related to HubSpot, to make sure that they can rank on Google and they can have this huge organic traffic. And at the end of the day, now they've lost it. And it's like, it makes sense, because ultimately, even that traffic wasn't really doing anything for them at the end of the day, because they're just showing up in places where they don't necessarily need to be showing up. And so I would say defocus a little bit, in as much as it can be very tempting to think about like, how can I hack this game? And just think more about how can I make sure that I'm showing up across all the different places where my user would be searching, right? And ultimately that would come back to eventually also make your content more visible even in AI searches. Something else that I can also say, and I mentioned before that you can also do, is reverse searching your audience's questions on some of these channels. So whether it's Google, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Perplexity, whatever it is. So just asking some of the questions that your audience would ask and then getting a sense of what kind of answers are showing up, because that can also help you understand, are there gaps in my content and things like that. So you can use that to reverse engineer your process. But yeah, I would say focus more as much as you can on meeting your audience's needs across platforms than showing up on search results. And if you do that well enough, they should kind of merge at some point. At least that's what I believe. That's what I've told my stakeholders that I'm doing. So let's be looking. Yeah.
I will share a link to an article that I saw on LinkedIn. I haven't read it, but I think it's related to the question you just asked. So I was also curious about the same thing 2 weeks ago. But I'll look for the link and share it, Gabriel, on Slack.
All right, thank you.
Okay, anyone else wants to chip in or ask a question? Or should we just go to our Fridays and, get into the
Everyone
groove?
is on Slack as well, so they can always pop a question in on Slack if something else comes to mind. But yeah.
All right, thank you all very much for being a part of this. So please let us know your feedback on Slack. Let us know what you loved about this coffee chat session, and we are really hoping that in the future we can have a more collective kind of conversation, because I think it's really important just to allow ourselves to think as we are working as marketers, think about things that happen on the global stage. That's why we're all a part of this community, to think very critically from a global perspective. So looking forward to that future. Thank you all so much and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye.
Oh, wait. Oh, Gabriel wants to say something before we go. No?
No, it's a mistake. Bye, everyone. Enjoy your
Okay.
weekend.
Thanks for joining. Bye.